Welcome to Democracy Roundtable. I'm Jordan, your host, and today, Saturday, April 25th, 2026, we're diving deep into some truly impactful stories shaping our nation and the world. From the deeply personal consequences of immigration policy, to the complex shifts in global diplomacy, and a startling turn in federal justice, President Trump's second term continues to present a dynamic and, at times, unsettling political landscape. With me, as always, is my brilliant co-host, Nadia.
Thanks, Jordan. It's certainly a lot to unpack, and the threads connecting these stories really highlight a consistent theme of significant policy shifts and their ripple effects, both domestically and internationally. I'm looking forward to the insights from our correspondents today.
Absolutely. Let's start with a story that really puts a human face on policy. We saw an article this week about Janie Perez, a U.S. citizen who had to move to Mexico with her two daughters because her husband was deported under the current administration's immigration policies. This isn't an isolated incident. Official estimates suggest over 1 million U.S. citizens are married to an undocumented person. Elena, as our correspondent covering immigration and border policy, what are your thoughts on this heartbreaking situation?
It's a devastating reality, Jordan. The story of Janie Perez really underscores the profound, often invisible impact of aggressive immigration enforcement. These aren't just statistics. These are families being torn apart. While the administration frames these actions as necessary for border security, the cost to American citizens and their families is immense. We're seeing U.S. children effectively exiled from their own country because one parent lacks documentation. It's a humanitarian crisis unfolding under our noses, and it's driven by policies that seem to prioritize enforcement over family unity.
Elena, that's such a crucial point about the humanitarian cost. It forces families to make impossible choices. Is there any legal recourse or path for these families, or are they truly left without options in a situation like Janie's?
Unfortunately, Nadia, the legal pathways are incredibly narrow once a deportation order is final, especially under the current interpretation of immigration laws. The administration has significantly curtailed avenues for relief, making it exceptionally difficult for mixed-status families to stay together within the U.S. The focus has been on expediting removals, leaving little room for discretion or consideration of family ties, even when U.S. citizens are involved.
That's a stark reminder of the personal toll of these policies. Shifting gears slightly, but staying with the theme of the administration's approach to global relations, we've seen some interesting developments internationally. Maya, a leaked Pentagon email, suggested the U.S. reassess its support for the U.K.'s claim over the Falkland Islands, sparking a diplomatic row ahead of King Charles' state visit. Downing Street quickly reaffirmed U.K. sovereignty. What's behind this sudden shift from the U.S., and how does it tie into broader foreign policy?
Thanks, Jordan. This Falklands leak is quite revealing. While the State Department, under Secretary Rubio, quickly reiterated its neutrality, the very idea of such a reassessment signals a willingness by elements within the Trump administration to leverage long-standing alliances for immediate policy gains. The leaked email explicitly linked it to disagreements over Iran policy. It suggests a transactional approach to diplomacy, where historical alliances are not sacrosanct, but rather bargaining chips. This kind of move creates significant instability, not just for the UK, but for all U.S. allies, wondering if their own foundational agreements could be next on the chopping block.
So it's not just about the Falklands, but about a broader signal to allies that their relationship with the U.S. is conditional on their alignment with specific U.S. foreign policy objectives, especially concerning Iran. That's a huge departure.
Precisely, Nadia. And speaking of Iran, we also saw news this week that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are traveling to Pakistan for talks with Iranian officials. This comes amidst conflicting statements about who initiated the meeting. This engagement, while potentially aimed at de-escalation, also highlights the administration's preference for unconventional diplomatic channels, often bypassing traditional State Department protocols. It's a very high-stakes, high-risk strategy.
It certainly is, and these international tensions are compounded by another significant development, Maya. EU leaders are actively exploring their Mutual Assistance Pact as an alternative security arrangement, given the fraying U.S.-NATO relations under President Trump. He's openly criticized NATO allies and even considered withdrawing the U.S. from the organization. What does this mean for the future of the transatlantic alliance?
This move by the EU is a direct response to a very real fear, Jordan. President Trump's rhetoric and actions have consistently undermined the principle of collective defense that NATO is built upon. For European leaders, relying on a U.S. commitment that appears increasingly tenuous is simply not an option. They are essentially contingency planning for a world where the U.S. is either absent or an unreliable partner in their security. This doesn't just fray relations, it fundamentally reshapes the global security architecture, potentially leading to a more fragmented and less stable world order, where traditional alliances are weakened beyond repair.
It's a profound shift, really. The U.S. has been the bedrock of that security for decades, and to see Europe actively planning for a post-NATO future is a testament to how seriously they're taking this administration's stance. It's a huge concern.
It absolutely is, Nadia. Now, let's bring it back home, but to another area where the Justice Department is making significant waves. Sarah, we learned this week that the Justice Department intervened in a lawsuit by Elon Musk's xAI against Colorado, challenging a state law regulating AI systems. This creates a fascinating conflict between federal and state regulatory efforts, especially with Elon Musk leading the Department of Government Efficiency. What's the legal landscape here?
This is a really pivotal case, Jordan. Colorado's Senate Bill 24-205 imposes disclosure and risk mitigation requirements on developers of high-risk AI systems. The Justice Department's intervention on behalf of xAI signals the Trump administration's preference for a federal framework for AI regulation, likely one that is less stringent or more favorable to industry. It sets up a classic preemption battle. Can a state regulate an area where the federal government believes it should have sole authority, or at least a harmonized approach? The involvement of Elon Musk's xAI, given his role in the administration, adds another layer of complexity, raising questions about potential conflicts of interest and the administration's broader stance on tech regulation.
So it's not just about AI, but about the balance of power between states and the federal government. With a dash of powerful tech interests thrown in, it feels like the administration is trying to centralize control over these emerging tech sectors.
That's a great point, Nadia. It aligns with a broader pattern we've seen, where the administration pushes for federal supremacy in areas it deems strategically important, often to the detriment of state-level innovation or protections. The outcome of this case could set a significant precedent for how AI is regulated across the country.
Indeed. And speaking of the Justice Department, there's another major policy reversal that came out this week. The Justice Department announced it will allow firing squads for federal executions, reversing Biden-era policies. This move aims to expedite the death penalty process and reflects President Trump's commitment to capital punishment. Sarah, what are the legal and ethical ramifications of this change?